This is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio. Big up, big up, big up. Ground Zero. He's going to give you guys some info, and then we're going to have the beautiful Andy and Laura come up and perform. And then, well, we got the big act. You already know who that is. But here you go, brother. We appreciate you.
Thank you all for coming out. And this is an amazing event. This is my first time here. I'm very excited to be a part of this. I got to admit, I came in here. I didn't get much sleep last night, so I kind of had to go back to the hotel, come back, and regenerate my engines and to get things going again. For those of you that don't know, I'm Clyde Lewis. I do a radio show called Ground Zero Radio. It's heard on 170 stations across the country. I have my own little digital playground called Aftermath.media, where I have study groups and all kinds of great stuff for some of the people who speak about what we're here to do, and that is to change the hearts and minds of people about our future in this country and what our future holds for us. I do my show from Portland, Oregon. Many of you don't know that Portland was one of the last states to open up and say everything's okay, you know. Fasten seatbelt sign came off, everybody could move about the cabin again. And what it was is a group of our leaders got together and they all met at a soccer stadium, patted themselves on the back after keeping us in prison for 16 months. And I think many of us feel like that we've been in prison for 16 months. And I think that a lot of the time in this whole situation, we forgot about what it means to be free, what it means to have dignity, and what it means to have empathy for one another. For 16 months, fear of the spread of a pandemic forced nations all over the globe to curtail their citizens' freedom of movement. To the United States and its municipalities, there were no exceptions. To combat this virus we were in the middle of, people were required to remain at home, to refrain from going to work or school, and to engage in the new process of social distancing. Never in American history has our freedom been so restricted as it is now. And even with the reopening of states across this nation of ours, people are still remaining in their self-imposed prisons. Reality has been shaken, and people are now afraid to get back to the process of normality and enjoy what freedoms we have left, if there are any left to be had. It's easy to forget, given the last 16 months, that people have been bitterly divided. I guess 5 years we've been bitterly divided, really. But it's about mutually exclusive realities here that we're dealing with. Regarding people who don't conform to their realities, we see them as enemies. Some see them as enemies. The last 5 years, this has been going. I'm not talking about just about political disagreements or even socio-cultural differences. I'm talking about contradictory realities. Things that actually happened or didn't happen, things that exist, that do not exist. We've been hearing about all of that. UFOs. Whoever thought that 30 years ago we'd be talking about UFOs or ghosts or anything else for that matter? Either they exist or they don't. Either love exists or it doesn't. Either freedom exists or it doesn't. It appears that while conservative America is licking its wounds over perceived stolen election and holding out home for some miracle deus ex machina, liberal America now values snobbery, censorship, and the cancel culture. I want to ask everybody out here in the audience, when was the last time have you heard the good guys in history censoring people, censoring their freedom of speech? If you can tell me a time in history where the good guys were censoring people, please, I want to hear who it was. You can't tell me there was, because there isn't. And so when you see people censoring free speech, when you tell people they can't express their views, think of who was responsible for doing it in the past and where they ended up. I guess it's anyone's argument what is worse for the country. The United States has turned into a factory of consent. They've turned into a factory of consent rather than a place where open minds shape the future. We're seeing tedious reports in the media where people have to ask for permission or apologize while expressing their views. Show trials is what they called them in the Soviet Union when Soviet Russia was around. Show trials is what they call them in Xi Jinping's China. Do we do show trials here in the United States now where people have to apologize for their views, apologize for certain feelings, apologizing for thinking outside the box and outside the margins? All of us are here because we think outside the margins. We believe in inclusive behaviors and dignity and love. If you decide to shut down somebody you don't agree with, and if it's an organized effort to do so, every American becomes a target. Every single one of you will become a target for this. A group of Americans, faceless and nameless phantoms, are imposing on us a new reality in which facts no longer matter, where things that never happened officially happen, and other things that obviously happened never happened, not officially, or were far-right extremist conspiracy theories, or fake news, or disinformation, or whatever, despite the fact that people knew what they really were, despite the fact that people know what is going on. They'll tell you to your face that you're wrong, even though you know you're right. It's a hard task to keep up. So many Americans are choosing to give up. There are some that have the fight in them, but that fight remains behind the keyboard, where Twitter and Facebook are a tool to shout out, 1776 will return again, with leeches and all. But 2021 is here, and it has warts and all. What are we going to do about that? People are afraid to get back to normal. People have been told that they now are free to take off their masks, get back to normal. Yet they're still wearing them, and some businesses still require them. And being told that America has reopened, but now it appears things are still kind of where they used to be. It's either that, or people are afraid of reality. They're afraid of that punishment of no-touch torture was crushed their spirit and beyond. I can't speak for everyone. I can only observe and wonder what it's going to take to get people to wake up and fight for not only their freedom, but their sense of reality and morality. Yes, America has taken a beating, but we have to take responsibility for letting it happen, and we can speak up against those who wish to allow it to continue. Reality and freedom are nebulous concepts. We can take a picture. You can't take a picture of reality. You can't take a picture of freedom. You can't hold it in your hands. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. It's something that you have to live through and understand it psychologically. It's like love. You know it when you got it. You know it when it happens. You feel it. Sometimes it takes work to maintain it. Same goes for empathy, something that is short supply right now, something that we must nurture in order to survive into the future. For most people, for most practical purposes, freedom should be within our reality. It should be our reality. Freedom isn't just arbitrary. It's not just some empty signifier that doesn't actually refer to anything, but it's something which we use strategically to contain tyranny. Freedom doesn't determine reality, but our reality has to include freedom. Freedom has become nothing more than a magic word now, rather than something put into practice, because many countries in the world believe that they are free. Not just Americans. Canadian citizens have been told they are free. The Japanese think they're free too. The very country that we escaped from to get our freedom from the UK, they think they're pretty damn free. Belgium thinks they're free. Even China's told they're free. North Korea's told they're free. Everybody is talking about freedom. They all celebrate their freedom. There's some time in history where they all declared independence from something and became another slave to another thing. You know, there are 207 sovereign states in the world. 180 of them all say that they're free. Every single one of them say that they're free. Wow, they're all in it for the freedom. But with the sudden push for the global plantation, they'll all be enslaved again by a proposed new normal or a new order, whichever comes first. How sad, really, that no one is paying attention. The free country that we all claim to have is becoming freedom-free. And no one is the wiser, because that magic word is used to name just freedom. It's not really put into practice. It's a freedom-free world. And the globalist oligarchs think that you are going to love that. You're going to love what they've planned for you. You'll know nothing and be happy. I know that people don't want to believe that the New World Order is being imposed, but perhaps a demonstration in civics can reveal that we are certainly seeing acts of despotism to muddy the waters of freedom. Imagine that you are the founding father of an immensely powerful, globally hegemonic, idealistic system, and you wanted to impose your technology or your ideology on as much of the entire world as possible, but you didn't have an ideology per se or any actual values at all, because exchange values pretty much not really value to you. And so your mission was to erase all ideologies and values and truths and belief systems and so on. And then you transform anything and everything and everyone in existence into de facto commodities that you could manipulate any way you wanted because they had no inherent value whatsoever because their only real value was assigned to them by the market. How would you go about doing that, erasing all existing values, religious, cultural, and social values, and rendering everything into valueless commodity? You would alter the reality of those you wish to target, call it normal, and then use the magic word freedom to get them to overlook the idea that what you're selling them is tyranny. Naturally, there would be one official reality that you would force everyone to rigidly conform to at any given moment in time. You would change the official reality frequently, pretend that they never conformed to the old one, and then, once they had settled into that one, you would change the official reality again until people's brains just shut down completely and they gave up trying to make sense of anything and just tried to figure out what you wanted them to believe in on any given day. And you'd say, this is freedom. Yes, this is freedom, not oppression. Freedom, freedom, more freedom. And hey, to put a cherry on top of that, we'll call it freedom. It's not freedom. Are you getting it yet? Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? If you repeated that process long enough, eventually nothing would mean anything to you anymore because everything could potentially mean anything, at which point you could basically tell people anything you wanted and they'd go along with it because what the hell difference would it make? I'm free. Doesn't matter. This has been a very long 16 months that we've been in quarantine here. The lockdowns, the no-touch torture, distancing, mandatory mask wearing, and now in some cases, forced vaccinations. But hey, your freedom, it's just a state of mind, right? That's all, freedom, freedom, freedom. Good old American freedom. That's what we got here, right? As Independence Day rolls around, I find myself looking at this whole freedom thing differently than in years past. I still celebrate what little freedom I have, but we're watching it disappear at such a rapid rate. Somehow neighbors turned against neighbor, brother against brother, and Americans are turning against their own country. No longer do we have the sense of patriotism we once did. No longer do we know the country will put us to fight with the threats. No longer do we have any illusions that people in government are actually working for us. We're now becoming fully aware of what I call ponerism, which is the study of evil. And that ponerism is in government. It's in politics today. And how subtly the evil is rearing its head. And there is also wide open treachery in the ranks of the political elite. They are there to work for themselves, line their own pockets and increase their own power. See, back when I decided to do my radio show back in 1995, I knew there would come a time when I would put my livelihood at risk just for telling the truth. I knew that eventually preaching freedom would not be free and information that revealed the truth would not come free either. I knew that eventually the truth would become a casualty of psychological warfare. But I have to confess, I never imagined that when it happened there would be a vocal minority with enough power to censor and silence those without someone putting up a fight. I thought that the United States had that fight in them. However, I never counted on a mass pandemic that would be used to beat down people into submission and force them into house arrest. And I really wonder if people know just how detrimental this was to our cherished freedoms and how it's beaten us all up psychologically. That is why I hope when we celebrate our Independence Day, we ponder what is happening to America and how it's become freedom-free. It's now free of its freedom. It is chained down to an invisible plank. We're in a virtual prison without barbed wire or concrete blocks, and I ask, do people even care about this anymore? Yes, I know I'm sounding cynical, but it's been very hard, and what I see, it's because what I've reported in the news, how we always do the same thing every 4 years expecting a different result, how we're afraid to speak out against corporate censorship and the cancel culture. The Constitution grants us the freedom of speech, but it doesn't grant you the freedom of reach. The power of those who wish to silence the patriots will not let freedom reach. So I say, rather than let freedom ring at this Independence Day, we should demand that freedom should reach. Let freedom reach. The 4th of July, or Independence Day as it's come to be known, is perhaps the most and the least American of holidays. It is the most American because it marks the beginning of a nation, because it rapidly became an occasion for expressing what America is all about, and because it is locally and voluntarily observed. It becomes a day set aside to spread nationalism. Yes, nationalism, the word that is now being acquainted with context of fascism. It is good for all of us to be reminded of the ideals America was born to embody, of the fact that it could stand to embody them more fully, to the fact that all these ideals can be emboldened or embodied at the same time, and of the simple reality that America is not itself an ideal, but a real nation with real people that need to borrow from the well of national memory in order to become united again. It would be good to remember as well that our country has made it through moments of much deeper division than this one we're in now, in lifetimes of many Americans, let alone in the span of a national memory. In order to maintain independence in this country, we need to acknowledge how dependent we have become and how we're now a freedom-free America. It is time that Americans learn what we are, what we're up against, and how we've allowed tyranny in the door. We can push it out, and it will take some patience. But keep in mind that those who are now taking our freedoms away were patient, and were waiting for the most opportunistic time to do so. Out of our fear, Americans have surrendered a lot of what many people before them fought for. Americans who truly support individual liberty, national independence, free markets, the Constitution, and other traditional U.S. values ought to study what this new world order means that is coming by the globalist planners. You should acknowledge the plan for the Fourth Industrial Revolution that is a thin disguise for actually the Fourth Reich enterprise. You should also learn the truth about Agenda 21, the 2030 Summit, political plans for you, population sustainability of the planet, what it truly entails. The New World Order and the region's globalists are not pushing a new idea, and for the overwhelming majority of humanity, the historical attempts at establishing a world order have been met with disaster. What makes America exceptional is that it was founded on principles that guide our public life, and yet will always be something we can aspire to. There is no harm in joining together the conservatives, the progressives, all that can be put into patriotism, because what it suggests is that progress toward justice involves vindicating rather than repudiating our founding principles. We shouldn't forget this, and we should always know that what our founding principles mean to us, and not conveniently cherry-pick amendments of the Constitution that need to be excised or adhered to based on cognitive bias. Visions of patriotism taken from our common national memory could be the answer to the riddle of how we can unify again. I know it won't make our differences go away, but rather to allow us better to live with them, and so with each other. We always talk about the good old days and how things were. Well, we can draw from that age-old patriotic unity that within our differences we remained united in the idea that we as Americans are quite a unique breed. It could help counteract our tendency to think of our political opponents as speaking from outside the American tradition. We need to stop seeing differences of opinion as a threat when they should be seen as a reason for citizens to be engaged. A love of country rooted in national memory would give us the opportunity to draw good things out of the ways in which we are now divided over patriotism. Yes, the faces of Americans have changed over the years. Young and not so young, men with necks and arms that are tattooed, next to elderly ladies, lesbian and gay couples, family groups with children, women with strollers, some of them wearing sheer t-shirts and shorts, having dogs with them, old and young hippie types, punks with their leather and mohawks, small and large, organized groups from different parts of the country wearing identical t-shirts and bearing banners that say Black Lives Matter or Gay Pride. Like it or not, this is America now. It is neither good or bad. It is just in transition. It is the summer of transition, ladies and gentlemen, and it will obviously be full of some not so welcome surprises. However, creating political adversaries within our border is no way a healthy transition, and force-feeding people with emotional blackmail accomplishes nothing in this objective, the objective of preserving and loving our unique and precious freedoms. Nietzsche called it herd morality, and how those in power can emotionally blackmail and gaslight people into becoming willing slaves, and how they can easily be seduced by fear. We must identify and speak out about it. Elect officials that also speak out against the dark side of herd morality and are willing to speak truth to power and that freedom has its risks. But that's what is about. That's who we are as Americans. We take risks. We are willing to take risks in order to maintain freedom in this country. America must continue to exist, and likewise should our freedom. We should expect existence, or they will face resistance. I'm Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio. Thank you for hearing me out.